This project was originally conceived as a way for the National Park Service, which was hearing increasingly about different big data sources out in the world, to understand how NPS's transportation planning processes and efforts could be enhanced with these different data sources, to understand, just the landscape of what's out there, what's a cost-effective solution for different problems, and really to understand how people are moving around within parks, how people are getting to parks from regional destinations, whether residents of Colorado, which is sort of the test bed for this project, were moving and accessing parks in different ways than non-residents, and then to understand kind of the temporal element of how travel varies between different time periods, whether that's peak season versus off-peak, peak times of day versus off-peak, and so forth. So they just wanted to understand with Colorado as a test bed, how could this data work for us? How can we see some value out of it? And Fehr Peers, as a consultant, went into this project with a data agnostic, provider agnostic kind of approach. We knew that StreetLight Data was a valued partner. We've worked with them quite a bit in the past. We understood that they were one potential solution to this problem, but we went in with the mindset of, we're going to hear what your issues are, what the key things you want to understand, what problems you want to try and solve with this sort of exploratory project, and then find the vendor that's the right match for you. So after exploring several different providers with different types of data, we ultimately determined that StreetLight was a great fit for our needs for several of the key study questions with products like both park level and regional origin destination data. So that's just data on where people are going to and from. More detailed trip sequence data, understanding not just beginning and end of a trip, but how different trips line up with each other over the course of a day as a person's moving through a national park that may have many different points of interest. How much time people are spending at those points of interest, so that's the dwell time element, and also some information about speed and travel time. StreetLight wasn't the one-size-fits-all solution for every question, but we found that they had a lot of value to offer for most of the key questions that NPS was interested in. This project really looked at National Park Service units across the entire state of Colorado. So there are 13 national parks, monuments, recreation areas, historic sites, and preserves scattered across the site. You can see here. In addition to looking at these units individually, we also brought in about 150 different internal and external points of interest, roadways, gateway communities, scenic corridors, and so forth. So we can understand both at kind of the micro level within the park, how people are moving around, as well as some of the key locations that people are accessing these parks from. There's a question about how this data works for very large communities or metro areas versus small communities. And Colorado is really a great state for sort of testing that element out, where we have both big metro areas like the Denver metro at Denver, Boulder, and so forth, as well as a lot of quite small communities, often in the range of just a few thousand residents, that are key gateways to getting into some of these big recreational destinations. So we had to, sort of incorporate that element and see how trips were interacting with those quite small communities. And we did see strong associations where we expected them to. One of the key deliverables for this project with these sort of cut sheets for individual parks. In this case, we have Rocky Mountain National Park, which was kind of our key test bed for this project. We were able to pull in from StreetLight Data a number of kind of key summary statistics that are useful for just getting a high-level glimpse of what travel behavior looks like at these different parks. We can see the split between weekday and weekend visitation, what time of year visitors are coming to the park, the split between residents and non-residents. Rocky Mountain was kind of notable as being a park that attracts a lot of visitation from across the country. It's one of kind of the crown jewels of the national park system and attracts a lot of tourism, but also sees a lot of visitation from within Colorado. And this helped us break down where people from those different groups are going. We have some information on how fast people are moving and how much congestion they're experiencing on key corridors into and out of the parks, what some of the top destinations that within the parks that people are visiting and how much time they're spending there, and then some of the top gateway communities that are feeding travel to those locations. We also were able to dig in to some more detailed information, again, using Rocky Mountain National Park as a test bed here. So we were able to see how people are moving across the entire state to access some of these key parts. And one thing StreetLight was very helpful with was linking trips together in sort of a customized data product, so that if somebody's moving, taking a 3-4 hour drive to go to a national park, they're probably making a stop somewhere along the road. They're getting gas, they're using a rest stop, things like that. And conventionally, that would define the beginning and the end of a trip, and we wouldn't be capturing the full picture of how people are moving. This sort of custom data set that StreetLight worked with us on was able to capture those full trips, and we could see what communities are driving visitation, for example, here to Rocky Mountain. Estes Park, which is sort of the key gateway to that park, drew about 2/3 of it, but we also were able to see these longer distance trips to areas like the Denver metro. We're also able to get some extremely fine-grained data, data that's almost a little too overwhelming in terms of how people are moving around within the parks. So you can see here, this is a visualization of 100,000 trip sequences within Rocky Mountain National Park during 2019. This is a little bit much to take in as an analyst, so we were able to drill down to understand what does the flow look like from key gateways. When people enter a park, what are the key destinations that they're going to, and also what's the order in which they're going to them. Are there clear patterns in which people are going from this gateway to this visitor center to this trailhead and so forth. In addition to understanding travel, StreetLight Data also helps us understand what's happening at the end of the trip. When we're combining trips together over the course of a day, it's helped us to say how much time are people spending at visitor center, at a trailhead, at a campground, and so forth. And we were able to see, for example, that in the green area in this bar chart, there are a number of locations where people are only spending very short amounts of time, scenic overlooks and places like that. And that data can help inform, okay, how do we want to organize parking? How do we want to manage traffic flows in these areas that have very high turnover versus locations like campgrounds and backcountry trailheads where people are spending a lot of time. Just talking to NPS staff and presenting these results, we saw some really positive responses to this package of data and this sort of exploration of what big data can do for an entity like NPS. Direct quote, "I can use the crap out of this. This is super useful." This was in relation to the dwell time data, which is really sort of a novel data source for visitor use management. Also seeing a lot of value in what this can do for the National Park Service in managing relations with the communities that are right outside of their parks and preserves and so forth, and that are kind of a key part of the tourist experience and that have strong economic ties to these parks and natural resources. So national parks and our public lands as a whole are a big deal here in the Mountain West. They're a big part of our economy and why people come to places like Colorado. But they also have a lot of value for places in more metropolitan regions in terms of just understanding traffic flows, parking management, doing regional transportation plans, travel demand modeling, and even transit feasibility studies all around recreational kinds of destinations.